India 2011. That was the time and the year that I learnt to be grateful for my apparent setbacks. I still remember being in the plane on the trip over to India, and as I used to do at the time, writing out my goals for the things I wanted to accomplish that year. Number of courses I wanted to hold, number of teachers I wanted to inspire, number of people that I wanted to teach, number of new clients I wished to have, and number of people that I wished to bless. Now, I'd done a course, the Blessings course, through Art of Living, 18 months ago, but in that 18 months I had blessed very few people. And it's one of these things that use it or lose it. If you're not using a muscle, it atrophies. In the same way, if you're not blessing people regularly, then that skill starts to atrophy. So I wanted to continue to bless people. I wanted to hand on that which I had felt very grateful to receive myself. So I wrote down, I want to bless 108 people this year. And then I remembered something that one of my teachers, my very first DSN teacher, Bawa, had said to me. He said, "Whenever you are making a sankalpa, always say 'and better' at the end. Why? Do not put a ceiling on grace." So I remembered that, and I said, yes, I want to bless 108 people or better this year. A whole lot of other goals. There were maybe 7 or 8 in total. I got to the ashram. I had this course I was doing, Guru Puja course, incredible course. Because I was international, I thought I can do phase 1 and phase 2 together. That's when the setback occurred. I went to the desk. I saw the course organizer and they said, "Oh, no. Banu Didi is traveling through India. There is no way that we can do, we're not even doing phase 2. Now this for me was a big obstacle. I'd come specially from New Zealand to India to do phase 1 and 2 together. And I'd be told at this time of year they always run those 2 courses together, which was true. They always had run those 2 courses together until this year, the year that I went. And so suddenly there was no phase 2. And I was going to have to take 2 trips to India to complete my training that I thought I'd complete in 1. And at that particular time, before I learnt to be grateful for apparent setbacks and obstacles, I was not happy. How can this happen? I've spent all this effort, all this money, all this time to come over to India, and now I don't even get to complete my training? All those thoughts of the very gratitude that I was there to learn through my Guru Puja practice were the furthest thing in my mind, and I was unable to even see the irony of the mindset I was going into at that time. Later that evening, in fact it was at lunchtime, I sat down at the dining table and I was at a loose end. I was there in the ashram as one of the few people who wasn't doing a course because the course I'd wanted to do wasn't on. Everyone else was doing a silence program at the time, and so the only people who were not in silence was me and the people who were ashramites, the people who stayed at the ashram. So this Danish person that I'd never met before, his name is Ali, a Dutch person, sits down next to me, and we get chatting. He introduces himself, I introduce myself. We hit it off straight away. We share experiences. He's got a lot of knowledge. He's only 27 years of age, and he's been going throughout India, giving corporate intro talks and doing all sorts of incredible things. And I'm inspired by him. And just as he's about to leave and says, "Okay, Daniel, it's been nice talking to you. I'll see you again." And he turns to go. I say goodbye. And then he turns around and says, "You haven't done the blessing program, have you?" And I say, "Yes. Why?" And he says, "Oh, it is just that we are going into the city and we are blessing people each day, going into some slums, some hospitals, some schools. I'm wondering if you would like to come." And I'm like, "Yes, would I what?" Thinking about my sankalpa to bless 108 people or better. Okay, great. And so we agree a rendezvous point. Now, the next day, there was some local political event happening, and so we weren't able to go in. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, another obstacle thwarted. He said, no problem, we'll go in the next day. Next day we went in. Now, what occurred over those 3 days of going into schools, hospitals, and slum after slum in the inner city of Bangalore was amongst the most extraordinary and transformational of my life. None of that would have occurred had I been doing my Phase 2 Guru Puja training. And I realized that was the reason I was there. See, we have these concepts in our head about how we think reality should be. And the pain that we experience when things don't go as planned is just the pain because of the gap between what our fantasy of reality was and what reality turned out to be. So that gap is created by our fantasy. The moment we drop the fantasy, there is no gap, because a gap is relative. It is between fantasy and reality. Drop the fantasy and be at peace with reality. You close the gap. The size of the gap is the size of your frustration. Close the gap, zero frustration. I had that experience. And from that point forward in life, and there's been many other events at the ashram where things had not gone according to plan, including just in 2019, where I think it would be lovely to go for my birthday, to be at the ashram and to see Gurudev in person. And people said, yeah, well, you should go at Janmashtami, Krishna's birthday celebrations, because he's always at the ashram at Janmashtami. You know how the story ends, right? Yes, he had always been there for the last 30 years, until this year he wasn't. And I remember getting there and someone saying, oh yes, he'll be giving a live telecast from the States because he's not coming this year. And I experienced a split second of that emotion of frustration, and in that split second dropped it completely and just laughed and thought, obviously, I'm here for another reason. See, that experience allowed me to fully drop the pain that is caused by expectations. And in those 3 days, I blessed not 108 people, but over 1,200 people. More than 10 times what I'd written down. So, number one, whenever you're setting a sankalpa, leave space for grace. Don't put a ceiling on that sankalpa. Right or better. And number two, know that you're not the one who's manifesting anything. I didn't do anything to create that manifestation. It all happened. Some thought impression came inside Ari's mind that caused him, as he was about to leave, to come back and ask me that question. Something caused me to just happen to be the only person at the ashram who wasn't on a silence program that day, so that he and I would connect that day at that exact time and have that exact experience. See, the divine plan is better than we can possibly imagine, and our intentions are conceived at the layer of our memory and our intellect. We intellectualize what we think we want based on memory of what we've had, but we can only conceive what we want based on what we've experienced, which is why it's important, number one, to leave ceiling room, and number two, not to be disappointed when our expectations turn out otherwise to what we imagine. And what was interesting when I went through that list afterwards, and most of those things I wrote down either didn't materialize or kind of semi-materialized, but the one that really not only materialized but was materialized 10x was the one which had the greatest degree of service in it, was the one which is the most pure spiritual intent, which was the one where my plan and the divine plan were in complete synchronicity, was the one where there was no egoic component to the goal. When I look back, the others all had a little bit of, and sometimes a little bit more, ego involved. That one was purely the desire to give back something that I myself had learnt and felt grateful for. That was it. And that was the one that manifested. In the next video, I'll be sharing what occurred in those 3 transformational days of blessings.